So at the time, I didn't know that what I had was norovirus. I didn't know anyone else was sick. I was by myself. I thought it was just me. I thought maybe I had bad water, maybe I have food poisoning, but I was hiking along the trail. I had passed a couple of these guys and I sat down. I was like, I really don't feel well. And the people I had been kind of hiking near that day had gotten a little bit ahead of me. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to make a push. I'm going to get to camp. I walked about another couple miles and just immediately started vomiting into a bush. And I was like, well, I'm camping right here, apparently. And so I just started setting up my tent. It was like one tent stake going and vomiting in the bush, another tent stake, vomit in the bush. Horrible. I threw up probably 100 times, couldn't even keep down water. It got below freezing that night. I definitely had a fever. And I do have a Garmin Inreach device. That's like the safety device I have, but it can still be quite expensive to evac yourself. So since I was still in a position where I could walk, I wasn't like actively like totally incapacitated, but I was afraid that I would get to that point. I was like, I feel like I'm going to pass out. I can't keep anything down. And I had 15 miles to go still to get to town. So I was using my Inreach device to message my family and say, hey, this is a situation. If I don't check in with you at these times, then like, you know, every time you send a message on a Garmin Inreach, it sends you GPS coordinates. So if I had passed out, I hadn't checked in with them, there would have been help that could have gotten to me. But I started taking these videos of myself because I was alone. I was feeling scared. I was so sick. And sometimes I think it's really helpful to just talk out loud to yourself instead of having these racing thoughts of like, what's going to happen? Am I going to be okay? How do I get out of this? To just say it out loud, only be able to have really one thought at a time and line up like, this is what I'm thinking and this is what I'm going through right now. So that's what I was doing in that experience. And that next morning, I start hiking. At first I just heard a car in the distance, but I couldn't see a road. And my thoughts were, okay, well, I'm going to continue on this path. I don't want to get off of the trail and I pass out, because if I pass out off the trail, then nobody's going to find me. So I keep walking, even though I'm like, that would be great to not have to continue and walk 15 more miles, but it wasn't the safe choice. So I keep walking. Eventually I can see the road, but there's still not a path down to it. So I continue once again. And eventually now I hit this dirt path, and there's like a direct dirt path going down to the road. And at that point, this is a point that I recorded in one of my videos where I am at this decision of, do I go down to the road and hitchhike by myself when I don't have phone service and have no idea who's going to pick me up? That could be a potentially dangerous situation, especially when I'm completely incapacitated, not in any position to defend myself if the person that picked me up wasn't a good character. And the other option is continue hiking, which I know I'll find other hikers eventually, but I don't know when. I could pass out on the trail, and I really don't think that I can walk 15 more miles. So in that moment, I decided to go down to the road. And, I put my thumb up, I went to hitchhike, and it's like the first car pulled over. It was this big black truck. I can see like two men sitting in the front seat, and I'm like, well, hopefully I don't die today. And I immediately sent the license plate to my family. So I was like, getting in this car, so they would have that information. That was like the only thing I could think of to do this in a safe way by myself. And one guy gets out of the passenger seat, and I recognize him. He was one of the two guys that I'd passed the night before. And so he's a PCT hiker. And so I just start crying. I'm so relieved. I'm like, I'm not being murdered today. Excellent. This is great. And the guy that gets out of the driver's seat, he goes, oh, I'm Kenny, the trail angel, who I've read about in the Far Out comments, which Far Out is the primary app that all of us hikers use to navigate. It has like comprehensive trail map, it has the water sources, different things like that. And you can leave comments for other hikers to read. So I'd read about Kenny, who's someone that hosts people in the town of Big Bear, California. And so I knew that I was good at that point. It was so wonderful to just be able to be like, okay, I'm safe. I have made the right decisions. This could have turned out really poorly, but luckily for me, it didn't. And I think I made the best decisions with the information that I had at the time. And after I got in the car, we drove a couple miles down the road, and I start getting text messages because I get service. And I start finding out that other people are sick and it's not just me. And Kenny said, "Oh, I also have 8 other sick hikers at my home that I'm hosting." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so something is clearly going on here. Something is going around." And, we ended up finding out that it was like a norovirus outbreak that really spread throughout a lot of the trail at that point. But it was a really scary thing to go through on my own. And the response to that was also really overwhelming and not something that I expected.